Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to take a little bit of a look at a card that, frankly, we need back. Now, this happens a fair bit. People will talk about cards that need to return, and people will message me asking about a particular card, and whether it's the kind of thing we should have back in the Pokemon trading card game at the moment. But there is a card that I have been asked about more than, well, any other for a while now, recently, and that is Headringer. So I think it is time that we had a look at Headringer and why, you know what, I agree, we totally should have Headringer back. Now, Headringer was a tool that came around in the X and Y era, came around in Phantom Forces to be specific, and it was one of two red bordered tools, and it was really kind of awesome. We had Headringer and we had Jamming Net, and they both came around in Phantom Forces, and we thought, oh, are we going to get a bunch more of these? Is this going to be a new type of Pokemon tool? And the answer was no. We aren't going to get any more of them. We're only ever going to have the two. And then they went away, which was a little bit sad. We did have some other Team Flare gear, which this was very much, these were Team Flare gear cards. We had Battle Compressor, which we all know how good that is, which discards 3 cards from your deck, still sees a whole bunch of play in Expanded. We had Robo Sub, which was a really cool card, which has actually been reprinted as a better version as Lily's Pokédoll. The reason why Lily's Pokédoll is better, Robo Sub, if it's in the active, you can discard it. Lily's Pokédoll, you can put it on the bottom of your deck, and then it's still in your deck. And we got Target Whistle, which let you grab a Pokemon from your opponent's discard and put it on their bench. Great for then tracking it down and KOing it. But we only ever got these two tools that were Headringer and Jamming Net. And what was really weird, they were Pokemon Tool Fs, as in Team Flare, which were the bad guys in Gen 6. And the reason these were so weird is that they were Pokemon tools that you put on your opponent's Pokemon, which we do not see very often. This isn't like Keyforge, where you can just put tools wherever you like, or upgrades as they're known in that game. You can only put tools on your own Pokemon. Now, first things first, these were tools that you had to put on your opponent's EX Pokemon. So, obviously, we couldn't actually just have a reprint of these now. We would have to change the wording. The wording that I would prefer is stealing from Empoleon, whereby you would attach it to one of your opponent's Pokemon that has a rule box and that doesn't have a Pokemon tool already attached. So Pokemon Vs, VMAXs, GXs, Tag Teams, and Prism Star Pokemon would actually get caught there as well, though in Expanded, it would also count for EXs. Now, what Headringer actually does is you attach it to one of your opponent's EX Pokemon, and it made their attacks cost 1 colorless energy more. That's it. That's what it does. It increases the cost of your opponent's attack by 1 colorless energy. And it worked for EXs. So back in the day, a common use for this would be, although it was an awkward one, you would try and get it onto a Seismitoad EX. Seismitoad for just 2 energy did 30 damage and item locked you. And of course, back then we had double colorless energy. So Seismitoad, you attach a double colorless energy, you start Quaking Punching, you're item locked for the game. Now, obviously, item lock stops you attaching a Headringer because it's a tool which is an item. But if you could get a tool on there before your opponent started using Quaking Punch, they wouldn't be able to Quaking Punch for just a double colorless energy, which means that if you could use any kind of energy removal, they would never get Quaking Punch rolling, and it would give you a really good chance. Nowadays, we would have it back, and it would work on GXs and Vs and all of that, and it would be so good. I mean, take something like Arceus and Alga and Palkia, which would blatantly be one of the best uses we would have for this. ADP has the attack Altered Creation, GX attack, for 1 metal, 1 water energy, and then for the rest of the game, all your Pokemon do an extra 30 damage on their attacks, and every time you take a KO, you take an extra prize. It is an amazing attack. It is a broken attack, in a literal sense of the word. It breaks the rules of the game, by making you take more prizes, and it's one that a lot of people very much dislike. So what you would do here is you would put a Headringer onto ADP, and then all of a sudden your opponent wouldn't be able to Altered Creation for a metal and a water. It would be metal, water, colorless. And in that deck, they're mucking around with things like Metal Saucer and Zacian's Intrepid Sword ability, and then Energy Switch. It would still be possible to get it going in a single turn, but it would be extremely difficult to the point where it basically just would almost never work. So now all of a sudden you can reliably and legitimately slow down your opponent using this attack. But then, of course, their Ultimate Ray now costs 4 energy, 180 damage after the GX attack, accelerates 3 energy. And, you know, when your opponent's using that to KO a Crobat while accelerating energy, that's basically game over a lot of the time, most of the time. But now they need another energy, and that's kind of awkward. And, of course, their main attacker is going to be the aforementioned Zacian. Brave Blade, 3 energy, 230. Well, now it's 4 energy, and they've still got Intrepid Sword, and they've still got Metal Saucer, but now all of a sudden things are getting very, very, very awkward indeed. It would slow down your opponent beautifully. And to be fair, we do actually have this effect in the Pokemon trading card game at the moment with Wondrous Labyrinth Prism Star. But the thing about Wondrous Labyrinth is, I mean, it doesn't work on fairy Pokemon, but like no one's playing any fairy Pokemon, so you're fine. But it affects you and your opponent. And we see some decks playing it. Decks like Centiskorch, I do see playing it quite a bit. Because Centiskorch is minimum 2 energy, but you do an extra 40 damage for every energy on you. So of course, most of the time what you want to do with Centiskorch is have more than 2 energy on. So Wondrous Labyrinth doesn't hurt you, but does hurt your opponent. And although these Centiskorch decks do like playing Giant Half, you do still see a whole bunch of them playing Wondrous Labyrinth for this exact reason. I've seen Wondrous Labyrinth pop up in Orbeetle V Max decks. Now, Orbeetle V Max, generally it's a 2 energy attack, and your opponent generally is going to struggle to get that 3rd energy on there very easily, because it's a deck that doesn't really play energy acceleration. But Orbeetle is also a deck that's got that ability that drops 1 damage counter on each of your opponent's Pokemon once during your turn. And you can use it on multiple Orbeetle if you can get multiple Orbeetle out. And then, of course, you use Robo-Sub a lot, so your opponent is actually blocking you from taking prizes even when you take a KO. So even if you are shutting yourself out of attacking, it doesn't really hurt you as much as your opponent. We've seen how good Wondrous Labyrinth Prism Star could be. The problem is, it doesn't work in a lot of decks. Incidentally, any deck like Centiskorch that can currently use Wondrous Labyrinth wouldn't really care about having a Headringer. Like, it would be slightly annoying, especially for something like Orbeetle, but it really wouldn't be the end of the world. When we're talking about using Headringer, we're talking about things like ADP, things like Zacian V, and you could keep going here. Something like Mewtwo and Mew that sees a whole bunch of play. It can copy any attack on any of its EXs or GXs in the discard pile or in play, but now it needs an extra energy to do so, so the 2 energy attack turns into a 3 energy attack and things get very, very awkward indeed. Something like a Pikachu and Zekrom. They are going to need 3 energy for a full blitz. Well, now that goes up to 4 energy, which gets super awkward. And they're going to be using Bolton to Electrify to get energy out, so they can get 4 energy onto a Pikarom, but then again, Bolton's Electrify now isn't for 1 energy, it's for 2. And you can still use Tapu Koko if Bolton's on the bench, you accelerate an energy and then get into the active, but it means you've got to use Tapu Koko early, you've got to use it on a Bolton, which you generally don't want to do, and you've got to have Bolton on the bench and then get it into the active. It turns things very, very awkward. But it doesn't stop single prize decks. So decks like my beloved Excadrill are going to be fine. Incidentally, Excadrill, not a deck that likes Wondrous Labyrinth Prism Star. I can play around it usually fairly well, but there have been multiple games where I just forget my opponent's playing it, don't save my stadiums, don't put my energy down carefully enough, and it gets too late to play around it, and then I go and lose and feel a little bit sad. But these single prize decks are going to be fine. Something like a Blacephalon can still attack for a Welder and a single energy, but if they want to use Cramorant, they are going to need to potentially get a 4th energy on there. But here's the thing about Headringer. It's not just a put it in your deck and win against GX and V decks. it would be a card, as it was back in the day, that requires a certain amount of skill to both play with and play around. Because if I'm playing ADP, there are 3 ways that I can make sure that I'm not particularly worried about Headringer. Way number 1, don't bench until I'm ready to accelerate energy and attack. Now this requires a slightly different way of playing, but make sure you got Metal Saucer on your Zacian, and then in one turn, play ADP, attach water, energy switch, and then use your GX attack. Answer number 2, play your own tool. Something like a Big Charm would be probably your choice in ADP, because if you've already got a tool attached, your opponent isn't allowed to attach something like a Headringer, because it's 1 tool per Pokemon. Option number 3, Tool Scrapper. You see, it rarely comes into play, but do remember that Tool Scrapper can discard a tool from your Pokemon or your opponent's, which means you can Tool Scrapper a Headringer off your own Pokemon, and then either replace it with your own to protect against future Headringer, or just to get rid of it to use your attack normally. But then, of course, if you are playing Headringer, you can use Tool Scrapper to get rid of something like a Big Charm and replace it with a Headringer. And that's what I like so much about the card. Incidentally, if it did come back, we would see so much Tool Scrapper. It's not just an easy card like that. It takes a bit of skill and a bit of timing. You can always play something like Guzma and Hala to go and search it out, which is something I would recommend. Not Adventure Bag. Adventure Bag has rotated. What you could do is actually play Greedent, which I'm not terribly recommending, but Greedent does once during your turn let you search for a Pokemon tool. So if you really wanted to make sure you had it at the perfect time, Greedent is a stage 1, but it would do it, and it would be there for you. Incidentally, while we're here, Jamming Net just reduced damage done by the Pokemon by 20, but there's plenty of ways to lower damage. It saw a bit of play. It was nowhere near as good. Headringer really was the star. So, do I think Headringer should come back to the Pokemon trading card game? Yes. Yes, I absolutely do. I think it would be a great card to help the single prize decks against the multi-prize decks. I don't think it's a lazy design that would instantly swing matchups. I think it would affect deck building. I think it would mean you'd have to play with and around it quite carefully. And I think it'd be a really good card to even the playing field against a bunch of these decks. But I want to know what you think. Do you want this card back? And if we do get it back, which decks do you think would really like it and really not like it? Let me know in the comment section. Go nuts. Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.